The Galactic Council's vast chamber stretched nearly a kilometer in all directions. Thousands of delegates from across the galaxy gathered here beneath a transparent aluminum dome that reflected the distant stars. Here, the fates of civilizations were decided, trade agreements were signed, and wars were prevented before they started. Here, the united races of the galaxy gathered, speaking with one voice. And for the 51st time in 50 years, humanity's seat was empty. Ambassador Katara of the Vix Empire stood at the center podium, waving her forearm in frustration at the empty seat marked Earth. Her scales glowed the angry red of her species. Around the room, representatives of dozens of species looked on with varying degrees of interest and amusement. 51 summits, Katara declared, her voice echoing across the vast space. 51 times we have extended the hand of friendship to humanity, but 51 times they have ignored us. They refused to sign the Collective Defense Treaty. They refused to join the Trade Federation. No ambassadors or representatives, just a polite automated message of denial. A murmur spread among the assembled delegates. The Quellan representative held up a control appendage, his crystalline body humming softly. Perhaps they simply wanted to remain neutral. Many races chose isolation. The Cathar laughter was harsh. Isolation. The Indari First Contact Team bestowed upon them the ability to travel faster than the speed of light. They were shown the wonders of the galaxy. They were offered protection, trade, and friendship. And what did they do? They returned to their home star system and hid like frightened children. The humans appreciated the technology, the Indari representative said quietly, barely audible. The Indari were a peaceful race, lean and graceful, and they had first made contact with Earth 50 years ago. They were grateful. Katara spat. They accepted your gift and closed their borders. Our intelligence reports indicate that expansion has been minimal. There were a few mining operations on outer planets, a few basic orbital stations. They were like cavemen, afraid of the dark and huddled on their home planets. They hadn't built any great structures. This wasn't entirely true, but Katara didn't know that. No one did. Far from the Galactic Council, in the cold darkness between Mars and Jupiter, something huge was moving through space. There were no navigation lights. The craft's hull absorbed rather than reflected the sensor sweeps, and at first glance it looked like just another asteroid tumbling down the belt. But inside it glowed with light, and thousands of workers roamed the kilometers of corridor. Manufacturing plants were running at full capacity, fusion reactors providing near-limitless power. Artificial gravity allowed workers to assemble components in comfortable conditions, a process that would baffle even galactic engineers. Commander Sarah Okonkwo walked through one of the main assembly bays, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. All around her, the skeleton of something immense was taking shape. The ship dwarfed any in the known galaxy, its frame alone larger than most species' capital ship. Status report, she said into her comm. Hull armor is 63% complete, came the reply. Ahead of schedule, primary weapons systems installed and tested. The reactor core is running at optimum efficiency. We'll be ready for launch in 8 months. Good, very good. Sarah gave a small smile. I wonder how the other facilities are doing. Delta Construction Site is reporting similar progress. Gamma Site is 3 months behind schedule, but within acceptable limits. Epsilon Site through Zeta Site are all green. Sarah nodded. They were called sites, not shipyards, because shipyards showed up on sensors. These facilities had been built slowly, carefully, over decades, each disguised as something innocuous, a mining operation, a research facility, a debris dump. Humanity had learned to hide in plain sight. Her comm blared a priority message. Commander, please take the communications officer. We've received a council broadcast. Sarah headed toward the communications center. The room was filled with screens, displaying data from within and beyond the solar system. Ambassador Katara was still speaking on the main display. I don't believe humanity can defend itself, Katara declared. Harvester swarms are growing stronger on the outskirts. Pirates are raiding shipping lanes. Without their participation in the collective defense, humanity is vulnerable. And if they fail, their systems could become a base for the enemy. So what will you do? Asked the Quellan representative. Cathar's scales turned a deeper red. Protective integration. The Vix Empire will extend its shield to the Sol system. Establish defense stations. Garrison Earth and its colonies. We will protect them whether they want it or not. The debate in the chamber was heated. Some species supported this measure. Some questioned the ethics of forcing protection on a civilization that did not want it. But as always, a vote was finally taken. The bill passed by a narrow margin. Cathar smiled, baring his sharp teeth. That's it. The Vix fleet will depart for Earth this month. We'll bring them to civilization. Either way, in the communications center at the Alpha construction site, Sarah Okonkwo watched the broadcast and around her the other officers stood in silence. "They are coming," someone said quietly. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "They are coming. Should we tell them? Should we reveal what we have built?" Sarah mused. For 50 years humanity had kept its secret. For 50 years they had built and planned and prepared. They had always known this day might come. The galaxy thought of Earth as weak, backward, insignificant. They had no idea. Not yet. Sarah decided. Let them come. Let them see what they want to see. And if they want to force us, we'll show them the truth. 3 weeks later, War Master Gel of the Vix Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Times Crimson Talon Asterisk. Behind him 200 warships moved in perfect formation through space, faster than the speed of light. It was an armada that had conquered 12 worlds, crushed rebellions and destroyed pirate fleets. It was thought to be more than enough to threaten the backwards human civilization. Fast forward at light speed and out the edge of their system, his subordinate ordered. "We'll show them our presence and give them time to understand the futility of resistance. Then we'll advance on their homeworld and begin establishing garrisons." "What if they resist?" his lieutenant asked. John laughed. "What? Intelligence tells me they have maybe 30 orbital defense platforms. We have 200 warships equipped with basic kinetic energy weapons and primitive missiles, plasma cannons and quantum shields. If they resist, we will neutralize their defenses without destroying them. This is a demonstration, not war." The fleet has exited beyond light speed on the edge of the Sol system. Sensors immediately swept the space ahead, recording everything they could detect. "Initial scan complete," the sensor officer reported. As expected, they had detected 9 planets, several moons, a large asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets, an artificial satellite around the 3rd planet, Earth, and around 40 defense stations in orbit. No fleet was detected. There was no fleet. John leaned forward. "Not at all. No, War Master. There were a few civilian ships in the inner system, mining ships in the asteroid belt, but no military fleet." John sat back in his command chair, disappointed. He'd been hoping for at least a token show of force, something interesting, but humanity was even weaker than intelligence had suggested. "Open a line of communication with Earth," the man ordered. Communication was established immediately. A human face appeared on the screen. He had gray hair and gentle eyes. He wore no uniform or rank insignia. This was Earth's central power. The man said, "You are encroaching on the sovereign territory of humanity. Identify yourself." "War Master of the Vix Empire," Phil replied. "We have received authorization from the Galactic Council to defend your system. Lower your defenses and prepare to receive a garrison." The human's expression did not change. "We do not recognize the Galactic Council's authority over human space. We have not requested their protection. We have 24 hours to retreat from this system. You dare give us an ultimatum? Human, look at your sensors. We have 200. You have orbital platforms, weapons that can't penetrate our shields, and no fleet. We have no chance. It would be generous to give you some time." 24 hours, the human repeated. "From now on, your presence will be considered an act of war." The communication was cut off. Zell stared at the blank screen in disbelief. Then he burst out laughing again. His men joined in. The primitive's boldness was almost admirable. "Change of plan," John declared. "We'll move within 12 hours instead of 20. I want to teach these humans the importance of respect." We advanced the fleet into Earth orbit. Weapons were deployed, but we held out. Let them witness us up close and prove their mistake. The Vix fleet advanced with confidence and strength, passing safely through the outer planet. They slipped through the asteroid belt, barely noticing the mining and research facilities they'd come across. They approached Earth's moon. Their weapons glowed, barely gathering power. Zell expected panic, frantic communications, perhaps even a futile attack. But silence returned from Earth. "That's strange," his lieutenant muttered. "They'll react. They're afraid," Zell reasoned. "Good. Fear will make them docile." The 12-hour deadline passed. Jerem was preparing to broadcast a final ultimatum. Then everything changed. At first it was subtle. Sensor readings didn't match up. Energy signals appeared where there should have been none. The sensor officer frowned at the display. "Running diagnostics." "War Master, we've detected an anomaly." "What anomaly?" They weren't sure. Maybe a stealth field. It was collapsing throughout the system, in multiple locations. Dozens. No, the main display said hundreds. The ESA system feed updated as sensors penetrated the collapsing stealth field. What they saw froze every officer on the bridge. The asteroid belt wasn't even a belt. It was a fortress. Massive weapon platforms were hidden among the falling rocks, each powerful enough to threaten a capital ship. What I had dismissed as a mining operation was in fact a shipyard. The stealth field receded, revealing ships in various stages of construction. Around Mars, in places previously unseen, the entire defense network was activated. Energy readings spiked across the spectrum. Near Jupiter, what had been recorded as a research station blossomed into a monitoring facility the size of a small moon. And then in the darkness beyond Neptune, in the frigid waters where nothing should have existed, 2,000 ships appeared. They had been lurking there all this time, hiding in the darkness, waiting. Now the stealth field was lifted, and the engines began to glow like stars being born. 2,000 ships, each larger and more heavily armed than any in the Zell fleet. It's impossible, Zell muttered. Where did it come from? How could they not have noticed? The answer was simple, yet terrifying. Humanity had been building it in secret, in hidden shipyards scattered throughout the system, and beyond. They had built it slowly and carefully over the course of 50 years, and kept it hidden until this very moment. A comm signal rang. Zell picked it up with trembling hand. The same human was on the screen. Still calm, still expressionless. 12 hours have passed. Strategy Officer Jan, we asked you to leave. You refused. Now we will prove you wrong. Wait, Jaren began. But the humans had already cut off the lines of communication. What happened next will be analyzed by military strategists of the future. Vic's fleet was not destroyed. It would have been a simple, almost merciful act. Instead, they were systematically disabled with a precision that bespoke overwhelming technological superiority. Every single weapon system on Vic's ships was simultaneously disabled, not damaged or destroyed, but simply disabled by a cyber attack that had bypassed all firewalls and defenses. Engines lost power and were locked into safe mode by an intruder that rewrote operating systems faster than anyone could keep up. Communications were jammed by powerful signals that burned out receivers. No manned craft fired a shot. Automated defense platforms carried out all missions. Weapons were carefully calibrated for offensive rather than lethal force. Within 10 minutes, Vic's entire fleet lay helpless in space. The crew were unharmed, but the ships were utterly defeated. Zell sat in the command chair, staring at displays filled with error messages and system failures all around him. The crew worked frantically to restore even basic functionality. They were warriors, conquerors, the pride of the Freak Empire, but they were brushed aside like insects. Another transmission came. This time it was another human, a woman in military uniform. "Warm Master Zell," she said. "I am Admiral Chang Fleet of the Terran Federation Space Force. You have come to our system uninvited and with hostile intent. We've neutralized the fleet, but no one has been harmed. Remain where you are until we can arrange for a recovery ship to tow you to a safe distance. Then return to the Galactic Council and deliver the message." "What's the message?" John asked in a voice. Admiral Chen's face was as cold as steel. "Tell them I heard. Tell them that for 50 years you have watched every council meeting, every debate, every vote. Tell them that you have stood by not out of fear or weakness, but because you were prepared. Our history has taught us that the hope of peace is not enough. We must prepare for war." She leaned forward a little. "Tell them that what you saw today was Earth's self-defense system. Tell them that this is only about 20% of our total military strength, and that if they ever try to impose their will on humanity again, they will see the rest." The signal went out. He was silent, racking his brains, trying to understand what had happened. The officers around him were equally astonished. They had come to intimidate the primitives, but they discovered the primitives were completely ignorant. Far away, in the Galactic Council chambers, broadcasts were streaming across every screen. Earth was broadcasting the entire battle in real time, allowing every species, every government, every military leader to know exactly what was happening to those who threatened humanity. Ambassador Katara watched in horror as the fleet was disabled. She saw the 2,000 ships humanity had hidden. She finally understood why Earth had ignored all the summits. They hadn't hidden in fear. They had been building in secret, and now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was prepared. Then, in her growing horror, a realization dawned on Kasara that changed everything. 3 days after the humiliation of Vix's fleet, an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council began. Every seat was filled. Every species with a vote had sent its highest-ranking representative. The chamber hummed with tense conversation, speculation, and at times outright fear. Ambassador Katara stood in place. Her scales were a dull gray, a disgrace among her people. She had once been the loudest voice demanding action against Earth. Now her fleet was adrift in human space. Helpless, waiting for human recovery ships to tow it to safety. War Arms Master had sent a report. Kasara read it 3 times, her stomach tightening each time. The Council President, a Vosian who had been mediating conflicts across the galaxy for 10,000 years, opened the meeting. His face was solemn. "We have all seen the transmission from the Sol system," he began. "We have all read the report. The problem before us now is simple. What should we do about humanity? What can we do?" the Quellan representative asked, his crystalline body shimmering. "They disabled 200 VIX warships. They exposed a fleet of 2,000 ships we couldn't detect without firing a single shot. They have technology we don't understand. And they did all this while we thought they were primitive isolationists. They lied to us," Katara said bitterly. "Have they been deceiving us for 50 years? The Andari representative stood and said in a quiet but clear voice, "We have reviewed all the communications sent from. They never said they were weak, or that they had no military. They simply declined our invitation and asked to be left alone. We assumed it was us who interpreted their silence as weakness. But that was the intelligence report." Another delegate protested. "Surveillance showed minimal escalation. Basic technology. How could we have missed this?" A new voice came from the chamber entrance. "Because we wanted to miss it." Everyone turned. A human being stood in the doorway, a woman in a simple gray suit. She wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but something about her presence was captivating. Without waiting for permission, she walked to the center of the room. Her footsteps echoed through the sudden silence. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen," she announced. "Earth has decided to accept your invitation to the Galactic Council. I apologize for the delay. I have been busy. Thank you for looking." End quote. The chairman recovered first. "Ambassador Chen, you are welcome to attend, but this meeting is not scheduled to include new members." "I understand," Sarah replied calmly. "However, you were discussing humanity, and I thought we should be included in that discussion. We have been listening to your council meetings for 50 years. She prepared to speak. Kasara's scales turned red. "You admit to espionage." "We were listening in on your public broadcasts," Sarah corrected. "Council minutes are broadcast across the galaxy. We simply received and listened to them." "Is that espionage?" "I didn't know it was prohibited." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. She was technically. The council broadcast was open to the public. "Very well," the speaker said. "Since you're here, can you please answer our question? How on earth did you build such a fleet in secret? Our intelligence has found no evidence of any large-scale construction." 14. "No. 14. Anyone there?" Sarah smiled. "Your intelligence agencies looked where they expected to find something. They scanned our planet, monitored orbital space and monitored communications, but they inferred our actions based on the actions of your species." She pointed to the display screens around the chamber. "Are you sure?" The speaker nodded, and a video appeared on the screen. The first image showed the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "You see, mining operations," Sarah explained. And she was right. We weren't just mining. We had built shipyards inside asteroids hidden from outside sensors, and we used ships disguised as mining ships to move construction materials through the asteroid belt. It took longer than building in space, but it was impossible to detect. The next image showed the dark space beyond Neptune. Sarah continued, "You thought we would expand out into the galaxy like other species, but in fact we have expanded to the outer edges of our own solar system, and beyond." They'd built a facility in interstellar space, in the void between stars. Its true nature was obscured by orbital mechanics, and there were no planets nearby, just darkness, cold, and secrecy. But there were traces of energy, the Quellan representative protested. "A facility of that size would emit enormous amounts of heat and radiation." "And it does," Sarah agreed. "But we developed better stealth technology. We could contain the heat rays. We used your sensor networks to determine what you could and could not detect, and stayed below that threshold. We learned how you searched for things and avoided detection." Kasara was beside herself. "This is outrageous. You secretly built a military fleet under the guise of peace, but we built a defensive fleet," Sarah corrected, raising her voice. "No, we never threatened anyone, never invaded anyone. We simply prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. I believe that was a wise decision. When you sent your fleets to invade our system, we offered protection. We didn't ask for it. We didn't want it, and you still tried to force it on us, even though we refused." Sarah looked around the room. "I want to make something clear to this council. Earth is willing to join the galactic community. We want trade, we want to share technology, and we want to work together on common problems. But we will not be intimidated. We will not let anyone impose their terms on us. The Chancellor looked at her for a long time. Your actions, although defensive, have upset the balance of power in this galaxy. The Vix Empire has been a major military force for centuries. Now suddenly, a new force has emerged, one we know nothing about. Do you understand why that makes us uneasy? Sarah said. I completely understand, and I sympathize, but think about it. We've had the capability to take offensive action for many years. We could have attacked your ships, seized your systems, or engaged in any number of hostile actions, but we didn't. We stayed in our own territory and built defenses. Isn't that a sign of our peaceful intentions? Katara muttered. Or perhaps it's a sign of your patience. Perhaps you were waiting for the right time. Sarah turned to her and said, Ambassador Katara, if we had wanted to conquer, we would have acted by now. We have 2,000 warships. You know about them, for we have shown them to you. How much more do you think we have yet to reveal? How many facilities are hidden? You have no way of knowing. And that uncertainty is precisely why you should work with us, not against us. The chamber fell silent. Sarah made her point clearly. Humanity had shown restraint, yet also demonstrated overwhelming capability. They could be our enemy or our friend, and the choice lay with the galaxy. Representative Undari spoke. What does Earth want? Why join now? After 50 years of isolation, Sarah's face softened a little. We want what all species want: safety, prosperity, the opportunity to grow and explore without fear. We have remained isolated because we did not trust the galaxy. I have watched your council and seen species pressured, intimidated, and manipulated. We have seen the strong dominate the weak. We have resolved never to be the weak. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But we have also seen cooperation. We have seen different species work together to solve problems. We have seen a galactic hospital network save lives on hundreds of worlds. We have seen collaborative research produce discoveries that benefit all. We saw this council, flawed as it was, as representing something valuable, unity, and we resolved to join this unity once we were strong enough to defend ourselves. You could have told us, the Quellan representative said. We could have explained your concerns. Would you have listened? Sarah asked. Or would you have dismissed us as paranoid primitives? We chose to show rather than tell. Now you know our capabilities. Now you know we should not be a threat. And now we can speak as equals. The chairman mused. You said you were willing to share your technology. What does that mean? Sarah explained. We have developed advanced technologies and stealth systems, computer security, and automated defense networks. We are willing to share these technologies with the Council, with appropriate safeguards in place. We are also willing to provide ships for the collective defense network, under certain conditions. What are those conditions? Human ships will remain under human command. Our forces will not be under Vix command, or anyone else's. We will coordinate with our allies, but we will make our own tactical decisions. We will never be obligated to join a war of aggression, only defense. Katara tried to argue, but the Chancellor held up a hand to silence her. Those terms are reasonable. Many species command their own armies independently. I believe we can work with this. Gating. There's one more thing, Sarah said. We know about the harvesters. The chamber fell silent, and every member froze. The harvesters were classified information known only to the highest levels of government and military command. The fact that humanity knew of their existence was shocking. How? The chairman asked quietly. We discovered them 3 years ago, Sarah answered. Our deep space surveillance network picked up the first disappearances near the edge of the galaxy. We tracked the patterns and analyzed the reports of the few survivors who returned. We know what's coming, so you can see why we need to band together. The chairman said. Why should all species work together? Yes, Sarah agreed. That's why we're here. We built the fleet not just to protect us from the Council, but from the harvesters as well. We knew they were coming. We've been preparing. Kasara found her voice again. You knew about the greatest threat to galactic civilization and said nothing. Did you believe us? Sarah asked. 3 years ago, you thought we were primitives. If we had warned you about a machine intelligence consuming systems on the edge of the galaxy, would you have taken us serious, or would you have laughed and returned to your respective summits? No one answered. They all knew the truth. They would not have listened. We said nothing because we had nothing to offer but a warning, Sarah continued. Now we have something more valuable, weapons and an army designed specifically to fight an enemy that will not negotiate, and will not stop. When the harvesters come, and they will, mankind will rise with the galaxy, but we will not rise as subjects, but as equals, the Chancellor said, looking around the chamber. Gazing at the mood of the delegation, many faces showed a mixture of fear and pride. The revelation of the human fleet's presence had shaken the easy assumptions of galactic politics. But the re-emergence of the Harvester threat put everything into perspective. They proposed to accept Earth's terms. The Chancellor stated that as full members of the Galactic Council, they would have all the rights and responsibility. They will contribute to the collective defense network under the terms we propose, and we will begin coordinating a Harvester defense strategy immediately. I support the proposal, Representative Undari said quickly. The vote was not unanimous. Katara, Representative Vix, and several others voted against it. A few others abstained, but the majority was in favor. Earth is now officially a member of the Galactic Council. After the meeting, Kasara found Sarah in a side hallway of the capital. You have humiliated my people, Kasara said, her scales black with rage. Your warlords have invaded our system. Sarah replied calmly. We defended ourselves. If that has humiliated you, perhaps you should reconsider your approach to diplomacy. The Vix Empire has maintained order in this galaxy for centuries. It protects hundreds of worlds and is respected for it, Sarah said. But you must understand, Ambassador, Earth does not need your protection. We never have. What we need is partnership and mutual respect. If your empire can provide that, then we can work together. Otherwise, they would simply avoid each other. Kasara studied the human woman. She was small by Vix standards, and beautiful, but there was steel in her eyes, the confidence that came with knowing her civilization could withstand any threat. You've really known about the Harvesters for 3 years? Kasara asked. Yes, you built your fleet in part to fight them. We built it to fight anyone who threatened us. The Harvesters were just the most obvious threat. Kasara's scales turned a thoughtful blue. War Master Zera's report read, your cyber warfare capabilities are superior to anything he has encountered yet. If you can disable our ships so easily, what do the Harvesters do? I don't know, Sarah admitted. The Harvesters are machine intelligence. They may be harder to hack than your systems, or they may be more vulnerable. We'll find out when we confront them and they come. Will humanity really fight alongside us? After all we've tried. Quote. Sarah was silent for a moment. Earth holds no grudges. Ambassador, we will defend ourselves if attacked, but we will not seek revenge. If the Harvesters threaten the galaxy, they threaten Earth too. We fight, not for the Council, not for the Vic Empire, but for our survival. Everyone. Kasara nodded slowly. Perhaps I had misunderstood humanity. Perhaps we all had. Katara, perhaps so, Sarah agreed. But you know better now. The question is, what do you do with that knowledge? Katara paused. You learn, you adapt. That's what my people do best. If you do that, you'll do just fine, Sarah said with a smile. This was a far cry from the political debates in the hidden construction facilities that dot human space. The work continued. After decades of building in secrecy, engineers and workers were now ready for the next phase. The fleet was ready, the defenses were in place, and now at last, Earth had earned its place among the stars as an equal. But at the edge of the galaxy, in the darkest reaches of space, the Harvesters continued their work. They consumed and modified system by system, world by world, building an army that would make Vic's fleet look like a toy. They didn't know about humanity yet. They didn't know about the 2,000 ships waiting in the Sol system. But they would know. Eventually they would know. And one day the galaxy would find out if humanity's 50 years of preparation had been enough. Could a fleet built in secrecy stand against an enemy that wiped out civilization? Could a race hidden in the shadows fight in the light? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. Humanity could not arrive at that day unprepared. They have ignored every summit, every invitation, every attempt at contact. They had used that time wisely, and now the galaxy would see the results. It had been 3 months since humanity had joined the Galactic Council. 3 months of careful diplomacy, technology sharing agreements, and mutual distrust slowly giving way to careful cooperation. Earth had a permanent embassy on a council station, staffed by diplomats who spoke a dozen galactic languages and understood the complex politics of governing thousands of planets. Ambassador Sarah Cheng stood in her office, overlooking the Great Hall, watching delegates from across the galaxy go about their daily business. Some were wary, while others were beginning to treat her like any other ambassador. The Undari delegation had even invited her to dinner last week, an honor that showed their approval. But Katara still kept her distance. The Vix Empire had not forgotten the humiliation their fleet had endured. They cooperated with humanity when necessary, but they made no secret of their resentment. Sarah understood. Pride is a powerful force in any species. The comm chimed. Ambassador, an urgent message from Earth's Central Authority. Please relay. Admiral Chen's face flashed across the screen. She was Sarah's sister, but few knew that. The admiral looked tired, the weight of the information that had robbed him of sleep weighing on his eyes. Sarah, this is serious. Report to the council immediately. What's the situation? It's the harvester. It's accelerating. Sarah felt her stomach lurch. Let me see. The admiral sent over a data file, and Sarah's screen flashed with star charts, orbital calculations and reports from the Deep Space Monitoring Network Earth maintained quietly beyond the galaxy's edge. What she saw horrified her. 3 months ago, the harvesters were consuming about 1 star system per month. Now it was 1 per week. The acceleration was exponential. At this rate, they'd have people in space within a year, instead of the previous 5 years predicted. How many ships do they have? Sarah asked. A conservative estimate was 15,000, and growing. They were using material from destroyed planets to build their own ships. It was estimated they were adding 200 ships per week. Does the council know? Not yet. Their intelligence gathering is slower than ours. They'll find out in a week or 2, but we need to tell them now. We need time to prepare. Sarah nodded. I'll call an emergency meeting. Admiral, what are our chances? Sarah's sister was silent for a moment. We don't know. We've assembled a fleet to counter the threat. Now let's see if we've built enough. An emergency meeting of the Galactic Council begins in 2 hours. Sarah has provided enough preliminary data for the major species to send a supreme commander in addition to an ambassador. The chamber was full. The speaker opened the meeting. Ambassador Chen has requested this emergency meeting. She has information regarding the harvester threat. Ambassador, please. Sarah stepped up to the central podium. Behind her, the main display lit up with data collected by Earth. 3 months ago, I informed this council that I was aware of the harvester's existence. Sarah began. What I did not tell you was the extent of our surveillance network. Earth has installed a sensor array in deep space beyond the edge to track the harvester's path. What we have discovered is extremely alarming. The display showed an accelerating pattern of system loss. A gasp and a murmur echoed through the chamber. Sarah continued. The harvester is not moving at a constant speed. It is accelerating. Each system consumed provides more ship material. Each new ship added allows them to attack more targets. This is exponential growth. At their current pace, they'll reach the first inhabited system in 12 months. That's impossible, Katara said, rising. Our projections were for 5 years. Your predictions are based on old data, Sarah replied. We have better sensors and closer monitoring points. The data's from yesterday. The harvesters will arrive here in a year. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates asked questions, demanded verification, and argued with each other. The speaker had to restore order 3 times before the commotion died down. How many harvester ships? Asked General Krell, Vic's military commander, a scarred veteran. 15,000 as of last week, adding about 200 a week. We estimate there will be between 25 and 30,000 by the time we arrive. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. The entire galactic defense fleet numbered 8,000. Even with 2,000 Earth troops, they would be outnumbered 3 to 1. What do we know about their capabilities? The Quellan representative asked, her crystalline body flickering with tension. Sarah presented new data, limited information from survivors. The harvesters use directed energy weapons, likely plasma-based. Their ships are heavily armored and appear to have some sort of regenerative hull armor. They don't communicate or negotiate. They just show up, destroy everything, and harvest the remains. Have you attempted contact? Representative Underly asked. Multiple species have tried, but there has been no response. The harvesters treat all organic life as a resource to be processed. There is no sign they have any such capability or interest. Communication, General Krell rose. Then we must prepare for total war. Every species must commit their full military might. We must triple the size of our defense fleet. Someone objected that this would take years. We have 12 months. Then we will accelerate the work, General Krell bellowed. Convert the civilian shipyards. Recruit personnel. We'll do whatever it takes. There are other options, Sarah said quietly. The room was silent. Earth has more powers that were not revealed in the demonstration 3 months ago. All eyes turned to her. Kathar's scales turned crimson. You said we demonstrated our capability. I said we demonstrated Earth's self-defense systems. Sarah corrected. I showed you. What I didn't show you was our deep space fleet. The display switched to a new star chart. It marked a location in the void beyond the galaxy's edge. The darkness between the spiral arms, a place no other species had ever dared to look at. For 40 years, Sarah explained, humanity had been expanding into deep space. We went not into the galaxy, but into the void. We built secret facilities in interstellar space, and constructed ships in the dark, where no one else could see them, because we knew our systems alone would not be enough. If something came from the void, we needed to be able to counter it. How many ships are there in the void? The Chancellor asked faintly. 3,000 more ships, larger than any in the home fleet, specially designed for long-term operations, far from supply bases. They had been stationed in deep space for the past 2 years, watching the harvesters and preparing for this moment. Space erupted again. Humanity had 5,000 ships. With the galactic fleet, that number was 13. They were still outnumbered, but no longer hopeless. Kasara rose to her feet. No, you lied again. We hid information, Sarah corrected calmly. Just as you hid information about your military capabilities, so too do all species maintain classified military assets. But the time for secrecy is over. The harvesters are coming. We need every ship, every weapon, every advantage. General Krell looked at Sarah with newfound respect. Are these deep space ships combat ready? Yes, they are fully crewed, fully armed, and positioned in the harvester's path of approach. Defensive operations can begin immediately. What do we need? The Chancellor asked. Coordination, Sarah replied. Our ships are powerful, but they are at their best when they are part of a larger force. We need to integrate the human fleet and the galactic defense fleet. We need a unified command structure, compatible communication systems, and a coordinated strategy. The human fleet under the command of... Kasara asked suspiciously. No, Sarah said firmly. It's joint command. Human ships are under the command of human officers. Vix ships are under the command of Vix officers. But we work together through a joint command structure. I've reviewed your service record, General Krell. You are an excellent tactical commander. It would be an honor to serve with you. Krell stared at her for a moment, then nodded sharply. Honor is reciprocal, Ambassador. If your ships are as adept at fighting as they are at hiding, we may survive. Over the next few hours, the Council worked out the details. Ships would be organized into mixed species battle groups. Communications protocols would be standardized. Supply chains would be established. And most importantly, a unified command center would be established to coordinate the defense. But reports continued to come in that everything was going according to plan. More systems went down. More colonies were lost. Instead of slowing down, the harvester was accelerating even faster than Earth had predicted. After the session, Sarah found herself alone with the Chancellor on one of the station's observation decks. The old Vosians gazed up at the stars, worried expressions on their faces. We faced threats before, he said quietly. Pirates, rogue nations, even species trying to conquer their neighbors. But this time is different. Yes, Sarah agreed. This was an extinction event. Even if the harvesters won, they wouldn't enslave us or take over our world. They would eliminate us entirely. Your kind was prepared for this. We knew it was coming. We prepared for the possibility. Our history has taught us that space is not safe, that terrible things can emerge from the darkness. We are determined never to be unprepared again. The Chancellor turned to her. There's something I don't understand. You built all those ships and defenses over decades, expending vast resources and based solely on historical fears. There was no evidence anything like the harvesters ever existed. Sarah was silent for a moment. That wasn't entirely true. When the Indari first made contact with Earth, they shared their knowledge of the galaxy. They told us stories of great races and civilizations, but they also shared their history. And there were gaps in that history. Races that once existed suddenly disappeared. Entire sectors went silent. The galactic community attributed these to natural disasters or internal collapse. But you didn't believe it. I considered other possibilities. As I observed the pattern, something terrifying began to appear. The disappearances came in waves, centuries apart. It was as if something appeared, devoured what it found, and then retreated into the darkness again to sleep or rebuild. I realized a new wave might be coming, and I resolved to prepare. You were right. I wish we were wrong, Sarah said quietly. I wish the galaxy was as safe as everyone believes. But it is not. The harvesters are real, and now we must face them. The Chancellor nodded slowly. We are glad your species has joined us. Ambassador Chen, even if it has taken 50 years, the time has come. Sarah replied. If we had joined sooner, you would have pressured us to combine our forces, put our ships under galactic command, and share our technology before we were ready. First, we had to be strong. Strong enough to fight on equal terms. Strong enough to say no when necessary. And now that matters. Yes. Now that matters more than anything. Far from the Council station, in the cold darkness of the galaxy's edge, A human ship floated in the void. The UESS Times Vigilant Times was a deep space surveillance vessel, one of dozens stationed along the Harvester's path of approach. Its crew of 300 had been stationed here for 18 months, watching and waiting. On the bridge, Captain Marcus Rodriguez stared at the sensor display. Something had changed. The Harvesters were slightly altering course, heading toward a different target than expected. Analysis. The captain asked the sensor officer. They're avoiding the defensive positions we've set up. They're detecting our sensor buoys and their bypass. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Harvesters were adapting and learning. This was more serious than anyone had imagined. He sent a priority transmission to Fleet Command. He ordered full encryption. The Harvesters were demonstrating tactical awareness. They were not mindless machines. They were learning from their contact with our systems. As the transmission was transmitted, Marcus looked up at the stars. Somewhere beyond the sensors, 30,000 Harvester ships were coming. And now they knew, humanity was waiting for them. The war hadn't yet begun, but it was looming. And when it came, it would decide whether organic life had a future in this galaxy, or whether the machines would devour everything. Earth had been preparing for 50 years. The galaxy was united in desperation. They held 13,000 ships with no second chances and no alternatives. Enough was enough. This was their fate. The Harvesters were approaching, and the galaxy would either rise together or fall together. The Kelvin system had been chosen for strategic reason. It was on the edge of a densely populated region, directly in the Harvester's path, with 3 gas giants for fuel, multiple asteroid fields for resources, and enough space for the largest fleet in the history of the galaxy. Captain Jennifer Torres stood on the bridge of the UESS, the indomitable Asterisk, humanity's flagship and the largest warship ever built by human hands. 3 kilometers long from bow to stern, armed with enough firepower to shatter planetary crust. The Times was manned by 5,000 of Earth's finest soldiers. The indomitable Times represented the pinnacle of human military engineering. Around it, projected on dozens of screens, the combined fleet formed into formation. The 8,000 ships of the Galactic Defense Fleet, spread across millions of kilometers. The Vix battleship, with its distinctive red hull, Quellan crystal ships, sculptures but armed with devastating energy weapons, and Dari aircraft carriers launching their fighters. Dozens of species, each bringing their own technology and tactics. And humans, 5,000 human ships, all built in secrecy, over 50 years, working with mechanical precision. The formation was perfect. Communications encrypted at a level never before achieved by anyone else in the galaxy. Situation report. Captain Torres requested. Tactical Officer Commander Parks responded immediately. All human ships, ready. Fleet cohesion at 9. Weapons systems fully charged. Defense systems operational. Ready for battle. The situation in the Galactic Fleet is chaotic. Some species are having trouble coordinating. Vic wants to take the lead, but General Krell is persuading them to stay in their planned formation. Overall readiness is about 75%. Torres nodded. It's not perfect, but it should be enough. The Harvesters weren't going to wait until everyone was fully prepared. The countdown timer on the main display read 12 hours until the Harvester fleet came within sensor range. 12 hours until the greatest battle in galactic history. 12 hours until it was known whether organic life could match the integrity of the machine. Open comms with Fleet Command, Torres ordered. General Krell's face appeared on the screen, separated from Admiral Chang's from the human fleet. The arrangement came after weeks of intense negotiation. Krell would command the Galactic Fleet, while Chen would command the human forces, coordinating strategy together. Generals Admirals the Times, the indomitable Times, report ready for battle. Torres agreed. Captain, Krell replied. His scales were the deep purple that his species wore to indicate combat readiness. All ships of the Galactic Fleet maintain formation. We will stand as a unified wall against the Harvesters. Let them break through on their own to resist us. The human fleet will maintain flexible formation. Admiral Chen added. We will exploit openings and respond to threats as they evolve. General tactical data is being transmitted. Our ships have more sophisticated sensors than most of the fleet. Targeting information will be shared in real time. Thank you, Admiral. Any updates on the Harvesters' capabilities? Nothing new since the briefing, Chen replied. They are equipped with energy weapons, heavily armored, and operate in coordinated swarms. They also adapt quickly. Whatever tactics you employ the first time around will be less effective the second time around. Then let's make our first battle count, Krell said grimly. Time passed slowly. Across the fleet, crews prepared in different ways. Some prayed to their gods, others double-checked their equipment. The human crews ran simulations, analyzed enemy data, and maintained the calm professionalism honed by Terran military training. Captain Torres walked around the timeless and indomitable asteroid. While he spoke with his crew, technicians in the armory were making final adjustments to a massive railgun capable of firing projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. In the fighter bay, pilots were readying their planes, small ships designed for precision strike. Doctors prepared for the last casualty no one would ever want. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "Sensor contact. Harvester in range." Torres hurried back to the bridge. The displays. The main screen switched to show data from the long-range sensor. What emerged was a devastation no one could have imagined. Not 25,000 harvest ships, not 30,000. The sensor computers counted and counted the contacts. 35,000. The sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. "We're still tracking them. They're accelerating production beyond our expectation." Torres felt his stomach tighten, but kept his face calm. "Contact fleet command." The entire combined fleet took up battle positions. Alarms blared. The tension of expectation faded away, replaced by the tension of imminent battle. Weapon systems switched from standby to shields activated. Fighters prepared for defense. The Harvester fleet began to move like a school of fish. Thousands of ships, perfectly coordinated. Their ships were ugly and functional. Their angular hulls were covered in weapons. They had never entered the atmosphere, so they had no aerodynamic considerations. They had no aesthetic sense, because they had no concept of beauty. They were machines built for the sole purpose of destruction. Commander Parks reported that they were not slowing down. They were maintaining their speed. The estimated time for the weapon to arrive was 45 minutes. A comm showed General Krell on the line. His face appeared on the screen, addressing the entire fleet. "General Krell, to all ships. What we face today is not an army. It is not a nation. It is a force of annihilation. The Harvesters do not hate us. They do not fear us. To them we are just a resource. But we are more than a resource. We are living beings. A civilization that has built wonders across the galaxy. And we will not quietly fade into the darkness." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are all different species here, with different beliefs, different customs, different histories. But now we share a common identity. Survivors. We fight together. We rise together. And if we fall together, knowing that we gave everything to protect life. All ships, prepare to engage. Show these machines what it means to face the living." The signal went out. Torres looked around the bridge. The crew looked back at her. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and determination. Then came the general's voice. Torres said, "Battle positions. Remember your training. We've been prepared for this. We're ready. We'll show the galaxy the power of human engineering." 45 minutes of final preparations flew by. Then the Harvester came within range and opened fire. 35,000 ships fired their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams streaked through space at the speed of light. The Allied fleet's shields absorbed the impact and glowed vibrantly. Shields were at 7. Tactical forces reported damage to sections 12 through 8. Hull breaches occurred on alert and disobeyed asterisks. "Counterattack. This is the order. Aim at the lead troops. Fire at will," uttered the Time's Indomitables, Time's main weapon. The bullets, fired by 8 railguns, arrived in seconds. They were so fast they were invisible to the naked eye. The bullets dealt a devastating blow to the Harvester ships. Their hulls crumbled, their hulls shattered, but for every Harvester ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. During the Indomitable Asterisk era, the battle was chaotic. The Galactic Fleet formed a traditional battle line, ships supporting each other and creating overlapping fire. It was effective, but slow. Harvesters swarmed around the formation, probing for weak spots. And then the human fleet showed its true worth. All human ships. This is Admiral Chen. Execute pattern Delta 7. Go. The human ships broke formation. To other observers it looked like panic, like the humans were fleeing, but that wasn't the case. The 5,000 ships broke into dozens of groups. Some groups used their short-range faster-than-light drives to jump and appear behind the Harvester line. Others accelerated to impossible speeds, using drivetrains that pushed their crews to the limits of their endurance. Others launched swarms of automated drones, tiny, AI-controlled drones that could react faster than any organic pilot could. The harvesters suddenly found themselves under attack from all sides. Human ships appeared in unexpected places, launched devastating attacks, and flew away before the harvesters could react. This was not traditional fleet combat. It was guerrilla warfare on a cosmic scale. Captain Torres watched her tactical display tracking the chaos. Target the group on bearing 270. Launch a kinetic energy barrage. The indomitable Times fired 100 small projectiles, each guided by its own AI, spreading out and pursuing its target. 97 ships spotted the harvester ships and attacked with nuclear-grade force. 3 were intercepted by Harvester Point's defensive positions. Good hits. Selecting next target. Enemy formation is Mark 35. Assembling for attack on Vitch's lines. Launch fighters. Order attack from above, will attack from below. 200 fighters screamed from Times Indomitable's Times Bay. They were small and agile, carrying weapons that could penetrate heavy armor. They dove into the harvester formations like sharks into a school of fish. On the other side of the battle, Vic's commander watched in amazement at the humans' tactics, which had no regard for traditional formation. They jumped, dodged, and attacked from unexpected angles. The chaos was beautiful, but it was also costly. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything else in the fleet, but they were not invincible. The harvesters quickly adapted. They predicted the jump coordinates and began positioning their ships where the humans would appear. They concentrated their fire on isolated human ships, overwhelming their shields with sheer force. The UESS Times Defiance Times was caught by 3 harvester ships during the jump and suffered devastating damage. The ship was destroyed, and life pods were ejected when the reactor core was damaged. The UESS Times Relentless Times fought alone against 50 harvester ships, and the captain refused to retreat. The ship sank with all its crew, but 30 harvest ships went down with it. One by one the human ships sank, but they fell fighting, taking their enemies with them. At the Times Indomitable's Times Bridge, Torres tracked the casualties. 50 human ships were destroyed, and 80 damaged, but the harvest ships had lost over 3. The exchange rate was favorable, but the combined fleet lacked numbers. The comm reported that Admiral Chen was on the line. Admiral Chen's face appeared, and Torres could see the tension in his sister's eyes. They had lost friends, colleagues today, people who had trained with them and fought alongside all manner of human ships. This was Chen. The harvesters were adjusting to our tactics, learning our jump pattern. A change of strategy was needed. Execute Pattern Omega. I repeat, Pattern Omega. Torres felt his blood run cold. Pattern Omega was a desperate measure. What they used when nothing else worked. Tactics. Ready to execute Omega. Weapons. Charge all forward batteries. Facility. Ready emergency power supplies. Pattern Omega was simple in concept, brutal in execution. The human fleet will act as the vanguard, charging into the heart of the harvester swarm. No dodging, no jumping, just force and speed to smash through the enemy lines, destroying everything in their path. They will succeed, but the casualties will be enormous. The human fleet will form into formation. Tactical reported that the fleet was at 80% cohesion, with 5,000 human ships massing and forming a wedge with the larger ships at the side. Times Indomitable Times led the way. Its massive formed the tip of the spear. All ships. This is Chen. We're going to show these machines what happens when they threaten organic life. Full throttle. Maximum firepower. No holding back. Forward. For Earth. For the galaxy. And for all life that ever was. Humanity's vanguard accelerated. 5,000 ships moving as one, reaching speeds that even their own crews found unsettling. Then they reached the harvester line. Times. The indomitable age fired every weapon simultaneously. Railguns, particle beams, missiles, drones, everything. The entire front of the ship glowed white with energy release. Dozens of harvester ships were destroyed, wiped out of existence by the overwhelming firepower. The outdated, indomitable Asterix for so too were other human ships. They poured fire into the harvester formations, blowing holes in their lines. The harvesters returned fire. They focused all their firepower on the human spears, trying to blunt them before they could penetrate. The ships were destroyed. The USS Times Courageous Times was hit, its entire front section vaporized. The UESS Times Dauntless Times lost power and drifted into the harvester formations. In a last-ditch effort, the crews engaged the boarding machines in hand-to-hand combat, until the ship's reactors overloaded. However, the spears smashed through the harvester formations, piercing their communication network and penetrating the command module, finally defeating them. 5,000 human ships charged into the Harvester formations, with 3,200 emerging on the other side. In one massive assault, approximately 2,000 human ships were destroyed, but they achieved their goal. The Harvesters' formation broke, their coordination crumbled, and in that moment of confusion the Galactic Fleet struck. 8,000 ships suddenly advanced, attacking the confused Harvesters with all their might. This time, the machines suffered heavy losses. The battle continued for another 6 hours. Finally, the space around the Kelvin system was filled with debris. Harvester Rex was floating among the remains of a dozen ships. The beautiful formations of the fleet were scattered, fighting skirmishes, and finally, incredibly, the Harvesters retreated. They were not destroyed, but they had sustained enough damage that continued combat would have wiped them out. They leaped back toward the edge, scattering in dozens of different directions. On the bridge of the Times Indomitable's Times, Captain Torres collapsed in his command seat, as did the rest of his crew around him. They had won, but at great cost. One casualty report, Torres said quietly. Commander Parks opened the data and read it aloud, his voice trembling. The combined fleet had lost 2,000 ships. The human fleet had lost 1,800 ships, with another 600 damaged. The Galactic Fleet had lost 200 ships destroyed and 400 damaged. Torres closed his eyes. Nearly 40% of the human fleet had been lost. Tens of thousands had died, but over 8,000 Harvester ships had been destroyed. For the first time in recorded history, the service ships retreated. "Clear the way for the entire fleet," Torres ordered. Her face appeared on the screens of the surviving ship. She saw exhausted crews, damaged bridges, and in some cases, emergency lights on because the main power had gone out. "This is Captain Torres of the Times, Indomitable Asterix. We have won today. We showed the Harvesters that organic life does not die quietly, that courage and determination can stand up to mechanical efficiency, but we also paid a heavy price. We lost friends, colleagues, and comrades. We will honor them, we will remember them, and we will protect them, so that their sacrifice will not be in vain." She paused. "The Harvesters will return, they will adapt, and they will return stronger, but so will we. Today we learned to fight together, and we prove that unity is our strength. And when they return, we will be ready. Rest now, repair your ship, and mourn those we have lost, but know that we will rise again together. Because that's what the living do. We survive, we endure, and we fight." The communication went dead. Torres looked at his crew. "Well done, everyone. Begin recovery efforts. Let's bring our men home." The combined fleet began the long process of rescuing the survivors, retrieving the dead, and repairing the damaged ships. One thing was certain. The war had truly begun. This was only the first battle. The Harvesters would adapt, and return stronger. But humanity had proven itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy realized that after 50 years of hiding, this silent race had been preparing not for conquest, but for this moment. A moment when all was at stake, when survival itself was at stake, and only the strongest, the most determined would prevail. Humanity had answered the call, and we will answer again in due time. 2 years, 24 months, 730 days. Admiral Rachel Chen stood in the command center of the Council station, gazing at a tactical display showing a galaxy under siege, the war with the Harvesters already long gone. Red markers indicated the presence of Harvesters. Blue markers indicated the presence of Alliance forces. Many sectors showing no color at all because there was nothing left to defend. The first battle on Kelvin had been decisive. The second battle, 4 months later, was much more difficult. The harvesting fleet learned from their defeat, adapted, and returned with new tactics. The third battle was nearly devastating, but Endari's desperate sacrifice forced the fleet to retreat. No further major battles occurred. The war was getting worse. It was becoming a war of attrition. The Harvesters were attacking dozens of star systems simultaneously, forcing the combined fleet to split into smaller groups. Supplies were strained, resources were depleting, and casualties were mounting. Admiral Chen was exhausted. His hair was completely gray. Her uniform, once brand new, was wrinkled and stained from frequent sleeping in her office. Around her, officers from a dozen species worked at consoles, coordinating operations thousands of light years away. General Krell entered the command center. His scales bore markings indicative of his species' chronic stress. He looked as old as Chen. 2 years of war had aged him by 10 years. "Admiral," he greeted. "We have a message. You said it was urgent." "You're right. Chen opened a new display. Our intelligence has finally pinpointed the location of the Harvester's central coordination hub. It's located here in the Void Reach sector, approximately 300 light-years from the rim. Krell analyzed the data. Deep in Harvester territory, how did they get this information? Quote, the Times, the Silent Runner Times, made a reconnaissance flight, a stealth ship, human-designed. It survived long enough to map the network and communicate before being destroyed. All dead. Krell bowed slightly in respect. A brave crew. What have we found? The Harvesters are coordinated through a central network node. It's not a ship, it's a structure, built specifically to manage the fleet. Destroy it and the Harvesters will be uncoordinated. Defeat will be inevitable, but the tactical advantage will be lost. The Harvesters will no longer be a coordinated swarm, but individual ships, allowing us to target them. Krell finished. He examined the data more carefully. But the defenses around this node will be enormous. We must put all our efforts into the attack. If we fail, the fleet will suffer heavy losses and will be unable to defend the living space. I know, Chen said quietly. It's a gamble, but look at the strategic situation, General. We've lost 30%. The Harvesters have lost a similar number of ships, but they will be able to replenish their losses more quickly than we can. In 6 months, or even a year, there will not be enough ships left to mount an effective defense. We must act decisively, while we still have the strength. Krell was silent for a while, then finally nodded. That's right. We can't win a war of attrition. We need a coup de grace. He paused for a moment. But the Council will never approve this. Many species have already sought individual peace agreements, but that's impossible with machines. If we send our fleets on a deep strike mission, some nations will back off, and they won't ask for permission. Chen said, tell them it's already happening. Make it seem like it's already decided. Doing so risks destroying the Alliance. The Alliance is already falling apart. They need a victor, something to show all the species that they can win this war, or they will lose it. 1,000 little defeats, added together. Krell looked at her with the respect that comes from sharing a hardship. 2 years ago, he had resented the existence of the human. Now he couldn't imagine fighting this war without them. Humans are stubborn, aggressive, and unwilling to accept defeat. These qualities had kept the fleet together through calamities that would have torn apart most alliances. All right. Krell, he was going to put all his efforts into the final blow, but he needed something to break through the defenses. The Harvesters will have thousands of ships defending their coordination points. I know that. That's why we're working on a solution. We need time. 3 weeks. Can we hold this line for 3 weeks? 3 weeks. Should we consider the Krell? Yes, we're close. But what kind of solution can you come up with in 3 weeks? Something radical? Chen replied. A risky solution? If it works, it gives you the advantage you need. If it doesn't, you lose anyway. So you might as well try anything. She shrugged. A secret research facility built on a suspicious planet floating in interstellar space, far from the Council station. Sarah Okonkwo was working with a team that hadn't slept properly and Sarah had once been a shipyard commander. Now she led humanity's most compelling research project. Run the simulation again, she instructed the display, and the mathematical models came to life. Energy curves, probability calculations and predictions. Each one seemed to suggest the impossible could actually work. Sarah's partner on this project was mathematician, 7th Chord Ackland, whose crystals possessed computer-like brains, capable of solving equations that would take a human computer days to solve. Together, the two created something that overturned the boundaries of conventional physics. The simulation was a success, 7th Chord announced. We can disrupt the network coordination, but the weapons have to be delivered directly to the hub. Remote deployment is not possible. I know Sarah said this is a suicide mission. Many missions in this war have been suicide missions. Why is this mission any more important? Because I'm asking someone to fly directly into the heart of the enemy fleet, knowing they'll never come back. With other suicide missions, there was at least a chance of survival, but not this time. So Sarah thought. She had to find someone who cared more about victory than survival. She thought about the captains she had known, the crew members she had served with over 50 years of military service, and she knew immediately who would volunteer. 3 weeks later, the combined fleet was reunited for the final time. 11,000 ships, all that remained of combat capability, both human and galactic. It was less than half the number that had fought on Kelvin 2 years ago, but it was all they had. Captain Jennifer Torres stood on the Bridge of the Ages, the indomitable Astra. Her ship had undergone repairs and upgrades a dozen times in the past 2 years, The hull was littered with patches of armor that had been blown away and replaced. But the ship still flew, still fought, and its crew was among the most experienced in the fleet. Communicating with Admiral Chen, the captain's communications officer said. Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked directly at Torres. "Jennifer, we have a special assignment for you." Torres felt a knot in her stomach. Special assignments were never good news. "Admiral, what do you need?" "The Times, the indomitable Times, has been selected to carry the weapon that will end this war. Dr. Okonkwo will explain the details, but I want to personally inform you that this is a volunteer mission. You and your crew, if you accept, will fly to the Harvester Coordination Hub and deploy a device that will disrupt their network. Escape would be impossible until the device was activated." Silence fell on the bridge. All the officers heard the transmission. All understood its meaning. Torres looked around at his crew. Commander Parks, his tactical officer from the days of Indomitable, was appointed. Lieutenant Ramos, the engineer, kept the ship running with spare parts and sheer determination. The communications officer had deterred 3 attempted ambushes by intercepting enemy signals. Admiral Torres spoke carefully. "My crew and I have fought this war since its inception. We have seen our friends die. We have seen entire species brought to the brink of extinction. If there is a way to end this, we will take it. All of us. Captain, you should consult with your crew first." "Admiral, there's no need for that." Commander Park stepped forward. "We've already made up our minds. The time is now for perseverance. We will escape, one by one." All the officers on the bridge nodded in agreement. Chen watched them, and Torres saw tears in the Admiral's eyes. "You are the best crew I've ever known," Chen said quietly. "Humanity is honored to host you. The galaxy is honored to host you. Dr. Okonkwo will transmit weapons and briefing data. You have 72 hours to prepare. Reconcile whatever needs to be reconciled. Say goodbye, and we will win this war." "Makar." The signal was cut off. Torres looked at his crew. "You heard the Admiral. We only have 3 days. Use them to your advantage. Disband." The crew dispersed. Each person dealt with the news in their own way. Some wrote letters to their families, others simply continued their duties and found comfort in their daily lives. A few gathered in the ship's chapel to pray to their respective gods. Torres went to his quarters himself and recorded a message for his family on Earth. He told them he loved them, that he was proud to have served, and that the war would soon be over. Either way, the 3 days flew by. The weapons were loaded in time. Time for the unyielding spirits continued. Okonkwo explained that a complex device would create a resonance cascade in the Harvester network. It effectively burned out their coordination systems. It was elegant and magnificent, and required close proximity to function. Very close. The combined fleet entered the Void Reach sector in one fell swoop. 11,000 ships appeared simultaneously, weapons blazing, preparing for the final battle. Harvesters stood by. 20,000 ships surrounded the coordination hub. A massive structure, a geometric nightmare. Every angle and facet was painful to look at for long. "All ships, this is General Krell. Execute the plan. Build a corridor for the ages. Indomitable asterisk. With all we have, no holding back." The combined fleet continued onward. They had learned much in 2 years of war. They fought in tight coordination, human and galactic starships working together like never before. Vix battleships provided heavy fire support. The Quellan fleet attacked enemy power systems, and Dari fighters swarmed around the larger fleet, providing cover and beginning a slow, painful breakthrough. The Indomitable era followed the fleet's wake, its massive hull protected by dozens of smaller ships. Torres watched the tactical developments unfold, watching ships die one by one, each trying to gain a few more seconds of life. Vic's destroyer took a hit aimed at the asterisk that symbolized the Indomitable era. The Andari carrier took up a position between the flagship and the enemy formation. "We're buying ourselves time with our own destruction. They're dying for us," Commander Parks said quietly. "Dying for the mission." Torres corrected them. "Human Vix, Quellan, everyone. This isn't about us anymore. It's about life itself." An era of fortitude surged deep into the Harvester formation. Shields blazed constantly, absorbing hits that would have vaporized smaller ships. Weapons fired relentlessly, clearing a path ahead, and they went through. A vast, terrifying regulatory hub loomed ahead. Time accelerated towards it, unyielding, the engines working beyond their design limits. Hull temperatures critical, engineering reporting, fires in Section 7. The aft life support system failed. "Keep flying," Torres ordered. "Just a few more minutes." The harvesters recognized the threat and focused all their firepower on the Times's indomitable asterisk. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. The ship's shields collapsed, armor falling away everywhere. A crack in the hull created a vacuum. The forward section was damaged. Damage control was reported. Main reactor has failed. Switching to auxiliary power. Main weapons and point defenses are offline. We're defenseless, Captain. Torres gripped the command chair tighter. Sparks and smoke rose from the bridge. Half the displays went dark, but the ship was still flying, continuing to move forward by pure propulsion. How long until deployment range? She asked. 40 seconds. 40 seconds. It felt like an eternity. Feeling the ship blow away with each passing second, Torres took one last look around the bridge. Her crew continued to work, to fight, even as the ship crumbled around them. It was an honor, she said simply. The honor is ours, Captain. Commander Parks replied. Period. Indomitable time closed the final gap. The remaining engineers activated the weapon, and Dr. Okonkwo's brilliant and terrifying creation was born. The device emitted a pulse that human sensors could not properly measure. It was not electromagnetic or gravitational, but something else, something that exists in the mathematical space between normal reality and quantum phone. The pulse hit the coordination hub and breached its defenses. It raced through the harvester network at faster-than-light speeds, hopping from ship to ship, node to node, spreading like a virus throughout the coordination system, and everywhere it touched, the network burned. The harvesters, once perfectly synchronized, suddenly became independent units. Tactics broke down and reaction times slowed. They were no longer a unified swarm, but 20,000 confused ships. In the indomitable era, the times exploded. Simultaneously, a pulse fired. Captain Torres and his 5,000 crew were killed instantly, their sacrifice complete. But on the other side of the battlefield, the Allied fleet was gathering. They saw the harvesters' coordination crumble. They found the opening they had fought and risked their lives to create and attacked with all their might. The battle continued for another 18 hours, but victory was no longer in doubt. With their greatest advantage gone, the harvesters retreated to their defensive positions. The combined fleet destroyed the coordination hub and thousands of harvester ships, and finally the machines retreated, not to regroup, not to rebuild, but to flee. They split into scattered groups, each flying in a different direction, back into the dark space between the galaxies. In the Council Station's command center, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays update. Green markers indicated Allied victories across the sector, red markers disappearing as harvester ships fled or were destroyed. Admiral and officer reported, "The entire harvester fleet is withdrawing from inhabited space. We are detecting jump signatures across multiple vectors. They're leaving." Reading. Chen nodded slowly. Around her, the command center erupted in cheers. Officers from a dozen races celebrated, hugged each other, cried tears of relief and joy. The war was over. They had won. But Chen didn't celebrate. She thought of the days of the indomitable asterisk, of Captain Torres and his crew, of the 11,000 ships that fought in the final battle, and the 8,000 that survived, and of all those who had died in the war. They had won, but the price had been unbearable. General Krell approached her. His scales were the gold of his race's victory, but his eyes were sad. "We did it, Admiral. Against all odds, we survived." "Yes," Chen agreed quietly. "We survived. The question was, what do we do now?" 5 years later, the galaxy was changed. The scars of war still bore fruit in destroyed star systems and memorials. But life continued. Species that were once near enemies had learned to live and work together. The bonds forged in battle were stronger than the old enmities. The Galactic Council met in the Great Hall, every seat filled. Humanity had even been granted several seats. Earth, in recognition of its sacrifice and service, was given 3 permanent seats on the Council. Humanity was no longer alone. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now retired as Admiral, represented Earth, and next to her sat representatives from the Mars colony and the Deep Space colonies. Humanity had finally come out of hiding. Their facility was now an open secret, their technology was shared with allies, and their presence was welcomed rather than feared. Despite all the hardships, Cassara still served as Vic's ambassador, and during a break in the meeting, she approached Sarah. "Ambassador Chen, I'd like to speak to you." "Of course, this is Ambassador Cassara." Cassara's scales were a soft blue, a sign of respect. 5 years ago, I called you cowards. I demanded that you be forced back into civilization. I was wrong, and to this day, I have been too proud to say so. Humanity saved the galaxy, not just with our ships and weapons, but with our determination to never give up. Even as others prepared to surrender, Sarah smiled. Ambassador, we have learned from history. Humanity once faced extinction on this planet. We learned that survival required preparation, determination, and sometimes terrible sacrifice. We hoped we would never need these lessons. But when the time came, we were ready. The galaxy is grateful. I am grateful. Sarah paused. There's something I've been wondering about. You said Earth ignored our summit, preparing for war, but you also said it wanted peace. How do you reconcile those two? It's not a contradiction, Sarah replied. You can and should prepare for war and want peace. A species that prepares for war will be warlike, and a species that wants peace will be vulnerable. We need both, aiming for the best, preparing for the worst. So what does humanity prepare for now? Sarah looked out at the stars from the chamber's dome. We will rebuild and we will continue to prepare, for the universe is vast, and we have seen that terrible things can emerge from the darkness, but we will also work for peace. We share our technology and help rebuild worlds devastated by war. We do both because we are survivors. Politics is irrelevant. At the Kelvin System Memorial, amid the scattered debris of the first battle, stood a monument. It was simple, a list of all the ships lost in the war, both human and galactic. A single name was carved at the peak, in local sun-kissed script, an asterisk of indomitable strength. Young people of dozens of tribes came to the memorial to learn about war, the sacrifices made, and the price of survival. They learned that peace does not come free, that sometimes terrible choices must be made, and that our greatest power lies not in our weapons or ships, but in the courage to use them when necessary and the wisdom to seek peace wherever possible. In Earth's orbit, Admiral Jennifer Chen, named after her aunt who died for her indomitable spirit, watched over the construction of new ships. The fleet was rebuilt, larger and more powerful than ever before. But like everyone else, she hoped she would never have to use it. The Harvester hadn't been destroyed. They fled into the dark void beyond the galaxy. Perhaps they would return one day. Perhaps they would adapt and prepare for new challenges. Or perhaps they would never return. No one knew. But humanity learned one of its most important lessons. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. Strive for the best, but prepare for the worst. Stand together, for there is strength in unity. Earth ignored the entire galactic summit for 50. Then, when the galaxy needed them most, they showed up with 2,000 ships and saved civilization itself. It was a story that would be told for millennia. It was a reminder that it is the quiet ones, those who prepare in silence, who speak loudest when it matters most. The stars shone in a galaxy at peace, a peace won by sacrifice, maintained by vigilance, and protected by the understanding that sometimes that was all it took to survive. But it was a price worth paying. Because in the end, survival wasn't just about living. It was about allowing life's beautiful diversity to persist, allowing organisms to grow, explore, dream, and build wonders throughout the universe. Humanity would ensure that, and the galaxy would never forget. Admiral Jennifer Chen turned away from the window and returned to her duty. Ships to build, crews to train, and preparations to be ready, just in case. Because that was the human way. They were prepared, they were ready, and they hoped for peace. But they never forgot that hope alone is not enough. And in that understanding, in the balance between preparation and hope, strength and restraint, humanity finally found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as survivors, protectors and equals. The vacancy became a warning. The 2,000 ships became a promise, and both became a legacy for humanity, always ready when needed, and always will be.